Hello, this is a very brief overview and introduction to illustration for story, just telling a story visually. So let's get started here. So of course, there's two major ways to tell a story. You can use words or images. You can tell a very compelling story just with images alone. Typically, we use a combination of both. And by the way, all the information in this presentation I'm showing you, most of it came from a very good book called Graphic Storytelling and Visual Narrative by Will Eisner. Will Eisner is, if you get into comic books, graphic novels, etc., or any just, visual narrative, you should know the name Will Eisner. So that's that. Okay, so the narrative tools, we have stereotypical images and we have symbolism. So if we talk about stereotypical images, now stereotype justifiably has a very negative connotation. It can broadly, it's defined as something that's just a conventional form without individuality. Stereotype also applies to that which is hackneyed. Hackneyed means overused or predictable. So it's not what you want to do in art, of course. But most of all, stereotype has a justifiably bad reputation because it's something that's weaponized as propaganda. So it simplifies and categorizes, a certain type of person or an entire culture, and it gives an inaccurate generalization. So it can be a stereotype can be very harmful and can be very offensive. So that's something to keep in mind. However, in visual storytelling, especially comic books, graphic novels, and even children's books, there is some necessity to using predictable images as a communication tool. Okay, so comic book art, for example, deals with recognizable reproductions of human conduct. So there's a lot of visual cues that we can use that the reader is going to recognize right away. So the images have to tell the story, so those images quite often have to be simplified, especially like in children's books, I would think, and some comic books. Simplified images lead to repeatable symbols, and that leads to stereotypes. But we use these stereotypes thoughtfully, not in an offensive way, it's just a communication tool. So, for example, let's look at this guy here. That's we know it's mad scientist. It's a stereotypical image of a mad scientist. Maybe not the most creative thing in the world, but it's something we recognize right away. It becomes like an icon. It's a part of the language in graphic storytelling, like an image such as this. If we look at this guy, right away we think hero, superhero, superpowers, whatever. It's just because there is a familiarity here with the majority of readers that will see this as an accepted stereotype. So this is an accepted stereotype that transcends cultures. There's heroism, strength, etc., etc. This is not an offensive thing. It's just a very, very recognizable symbol or stereotype. Comics, and to a lesser extent children's books, use a lot of animal-based stereotypical images, and one strength about this is when you're graphic storytelling, there's little time or space for character development. It's not like a novel. You have to portray what the character is about by what the character looks like. And a lot of times an animal-based stereotype will speed up the process, so the viewer will have a general idea of what this character is about. And when we talk about symbolism, this also applies to inanimate objects If we think of, like, for example, the Lord of the Rings films, the weaponry of the bad guys looked completely different than the weaponry of the good guys, right? It's like on this image you're looking at here, you got a bad knife and a good knife. So objects have their own vocabulary in visual language. Other thing is like how things are put in context. So here there's two characters. Each character is holding a knife. Happy guy on the top is like, hungry and getting ready to eat, and little evil man at the bottom, is going to do something very bad with that knife. So that's how the object is presented, in context, is integral to the storytelling. Another big deal in visual storytelling is the apparel of the character and the objects they hold. So that really tells a lot. That tells the viewer a lot of what's going on, just by like what the character is wearing. And again, we're relying on stereotypes. Like the top image, the little private investigator in green. The trench coat and the the broad-brimmed hat. That's like that's something that goes back to like to the noir films of the 1940s. That's just something we know. And of course the magnifying glass, that's the investigator there. So are those stereotypical images? Yeah. Are they symbols that we see all the time? Yes, that's true. But like if you use them creatively, the whole point is let the viewer know what is going on. So there's two, things going on. There's the written story, and there's the text, and then there's the artwork. Really, the story is really what's going to make your work successful. If there's a good story arc, if things proceed logically, if the characters are well developed. If your work has a lot of powerhouse layouts, excessive rendering technique, but no good storyline, it's not going to work as a visual narrative. So there has to be a balance. The rendering has to be good and recognizable and of high quality. However, that all the beautiful artwork in the world will not save a bad story.